It's Melody Song.
In today's world, televisions can be found in billions of homes around the world. But 100 years ago, nobody even knew what a television was. In fact, as at late as 1947, only a few thousands of Americans owned televisions. Now, everyone enjoys the views, the cartoons on Saturday nights, and the operas, the shows. But how did the television come into being? How did such a groundbreaking technology from a niche invention turned into a mainstream fantasy? Today we are going to be explaining how the television got invented, the brains behind the television, and the stages it took in history. Just ride with us. If you're new on the platform, kindly subscribe. Smash the like button to like this content and pass your comment in the comment box. Let's take a dive into the advent of the television. Between the 1800s and the 1900s, there was the mechanical televisions. Prior to electric televisions, we had mechanical televisions. These early televisions started appearing in the early 1800s. They involved mechanically scanning images, then transmitting those images onto a screen. Compared to electronic televisions that we had today, they were extremely rudimentary. One of the first mechanical televisions used a rotating disc with holes arranged in a spiral pattern. This device was created independently by two inventors with the names John Logie and American inventor Charles Francis Jenkins. Both devices were invented in the early 1920s. Prior to these inventions, the German inventor Paul Gottlieb Nipkow had developed the first mechanical television. That device sent images through wires using a rotating metal disc. Instead of calling the device a television, however, Nipkow called it an electronic telescope. The device had 18 lines of resolution. In the year 1907, two inventors, Russian Boris Rosin and English A. Campbell Swinton, combined a cathode ray tube with a mechanical scanning system to create a totally new television system. Well, in the year 1927, the first electronic television was invented. Before 1927, like I said, there was the mechanical television, which used disc. There were holes in between the disc, like 16 holes. But in the year 1927, it came into advention, the first electronic television. Now let's take a look. The world's first electronic television was created by a 21-year-old inventor with the name Philo Taylor Farnsworth. The inventor lived in a house without electricity until he was age 14. Starting in high school, he began to think of a system that could capture moving images, transform those images into code, then move those images along radio waves to different devices. Farnsworth was miles away and ahead of any mechanical television system invented to date. Farnsworth's system captured moving images using a beam of electrons, basically a primitive camera. The first image ever transmitted by television was a simple line. Later, Francois would famously transmit a dollar sign using his television after a prospective inventor asked, "When are we going to see some dollars in this thing?" So when Farnsworth investor asked him, "When are we going to see some dollars in this thing?" Farnsworth decided to display a dollar sign on the television after he had displayed a simple line. Between the year 1926 and 1931, mechanical television inventors continued to tweak and test their creations. However, they were all doomed to be obsolete in comparison to modern electrical television. By 1934, all televisions had converted into the electronic system. Understandably, all early television systems transmitted footage in black, white color. Meanwhile, the multicolor TV, however, was first theorized way back in the 1904. We actually would talk about the first color television pretty soon in one of our contents. Just stay tuned. Like I said, subscribe and turn on post notification. How did the early television work? The two types of televisions were mechanical and electronic. They work in different ways. The mechanical televisions relied on rotating discs to transmit images from a transmitter to the receiver. The transmitted images had to be placed in camera in a totally dark room. Then you place it in a very bright light behind the disc. That disc will be turned by a motor in order to make one revolution for every frame of the TV picture. Meanwhile, the electronic television actually replaced the mechanical television because it was vastly superior. The electronic television relied on a technology called a cathode ray tube, the CRT, as well as two or more anodes. The anodes were the positive terminals and cathode was the negative terminal. The cathode part of the cathode ray tube was a heated filament enclosed in a glass tube. The cathode would release a beam of electrons into the empty space of tube, which was actually a vacuum. All of these released electrons had a negative charge and would thus be attracted to positively charged anodes. Talking about the first television stations in America, the world's first television station first started in America in the late 1920s and early 1930s. The first mechanical television station was the W3XK and was created by Charles Francis Jenkins. We would be looking into that also pretty soon, the first television stations in America. Talking about the first television sets in America, America's first commercially produced televisions were based on the mechanical television system made by John Birds. These sets were shown off to the public in September 1928. It would take until 1938, however, before American electronic television sets were produced and released commercially. I believe by now you are familiar with the history of the television, and if you go out there and anyone asks you how the television comes into advent, you would by now be able to describe and give a detailed definition and description to what the television is and its advent. To get to know more about world's advent, the first edition of several products and phenomena in the world, subscribe to this channel, turn on post notification, and like this content. Till next time, thank you.